to Around the Lakes. I'm Joe Salzone. I'm a member of the Auburn Chamber Orchestra Board of Directors, and with the 2018 to 2019 season set to begin in just a few weeks, I'm joined by the conductor of the Auburn Chamber Orchestra and the music director, Steve Frackenpohl. Steve, good to see you again.
Yeah, I'm glad to be talking to you.
October 26th is the first concert of the season.
It is. That's a Friday night. It's we get to perform Merry-Go-Round Theater, which is always a great place for us. It's a great place for the audience to see us, and it's a fun place to play.
The theme of the first concert of the season is appropriate given the show we're on, Around the Lakes. It's all about water.
It is. I actually started to think about a concert built on different modes of transportation, and so boats would have been one of them. But I couldn't find a whole lot much besides a couple of things about railroads, and there were many things about water, so I decided just to keep it at the water theme. So we have, I think, 6 pieces. There's 4 rivers, 1 creek, and 1 lake involved, and so they all line up somehow.
When you have a concert that is built around a theme, does it present a greater difficulty in finding music that is appropriate, or once you have a theme set, you know exactly where to look?
I think it's, if the theme is appropriate and it makes some sense, it's nice to have it constrain a little bit because there are so many possible pieces of music out there. I'm not sure it necessarily helps with the marketing, although it might. People might be, curious as to what music inspired by water is. But it's more a way for me to limit the number of choices.
Did you know offhand how many different works there were that pertain to water, or were you as surprised as a lot of us when you found out what's out there?
Well, I think there's probably more than even I have found for this, and one of the reasons is that the water is easy to imitate with music. You can make things sound like little tiny waves or big waves or thunderstorms. And there are a couple of pieces that we're doing that are programmatic, which means that the music actually tries to describe what nature is doing, or a story, or that kind of thing. And so it tries to imitate the sound of water, and I think that's easier to do than some of the others.
This falls under the purview as music director. Walk us through the process of selecting music for a concert.
Oh, there are lots of variables. One variable is that I want to keep as much of the orchestra busy as much of the time as I can. They're volunteering their times, and they don't want to, certainly in a rehearsal, sit around and do nothing. So I think that's an important thing as well. And it's important to get the timing right, to have enough music but not too much. It has to have some contrast. So this concert actually has. I would say that the structure of it is like a symphony. In fact, there's a fast piece and then a slower piece and then another fast, lighter piece at the end, and that happens on each half.
Is there a physical music library you would go to, or is now most of it stuff you would find online?
It's the research is done online. And the availability is also done online. There are several music libraries I have access to, so that once I found out what I want, I see where it is, where it's available. Many of the pieces that we're doing on this are actually pieces in public domain. They're written hundreds of years ago, and those are much more available. There's a great website that has copies of all sorts of pieces of music that you can download for free. And we've done that, I think, with 4 out of the pieces of the 6 that we're playing.
Steve, the orchestra itself has been around now over 30 years.
Yep.
It was formed in 1986, and you've been the conductor for the last handful of years, over 5 years, I believe.
Well, I think this is season number 8 for me.
Season 8, so
yeah.
You've been around, and I wonder, does it become a challenge for you finding each year a different theme that either you have not done or you have not done in a while?
Yes, although some of our concerts are sort of preset. We have a Christmas concert, we have a Pops concert. and those are more limited but expected to. So it's the others that sometimes are hard to come up with what will be an engaging and entertaining program, but still something of interest for the musicians to play as well.
There are a total of 4 concerts every season, and we'll get into the rest of the season in just a bit. But I want to backtrack a bit. Auburn Chamber Orchestra. What is a chamber orchestra, first of all?
Well, a chamber orchestra is not what we are. I guess that's one of the things we could say.
It's not.
No, we are not a chamber orchestra. The name came as an outgrowth of a Auburn Chamber Ensemble. It was just much smaller, maybe eight or 10 musicians who wanted to get together and make music, and then it grew into an orchestra, but the chamber part of their name remained. Chamber music is a small orchestra, strings and maybe a handful of wind players, often not any percussion at all. And some of the pieces that we play are really chamber music pieces. One of the ones that we're doing on this concert would be considered a chamber music piece. It was written as one of a piece for small orchestra. But the rest of them are full orchestra pieces that have a full component of winds and brass and percussionists.
I know that there are a few members of the orchestra who've been there from day one, and you also have members that are currently in school. So tell me about the orchestra. Who are they? Where do they come from?
They're all over the place. We have a lot of very talented adults, as you say. So many of who have been there since the organization began, and many more have been there for 20 years or so, and have been remarkably loyal to the orchestra through many changes of music director and philosophy of those music directors. So I admire them for that, for staying with it for as long as they have. And they are, for the most part, talented amateurs, and I'm a big proponent of talented amateurs. And there was many years in music when most musicians were talented amateurs. The concept of professional musician was not that common, and there were lots of people who just played music well and did other things for a day job. And I think that's really important to keep in people's minds, especially students, as they age out of high school or even college. The idea that you can be really good at your instrument and not just put it on a shelf at the end of high school and forget about it. There are ways to stay involved in college without being a music major, and there certainly are ways to stay involved in music once you're out of college that don't require you to make money, with music. So that's what I would say. Many of the orchestra members are talented amateurs. There are several music teachers and retired music teachers who are sort of maybe a hybrid. They went to school for music, but not necessarily to be performers. But they have a lot of training as well to play in an ensemble.
I mentioned at the top of the show, Steve, that you are the conductor and the music director. What is the technical difference between your responsibilities as music director and your responsibilities as conductor?
Well, I guess you could look at it as a conductor as a hired gun. I mean, not in any literal sense, of course, but that they could come in and what they do is they conduct the program that they are set with. Whereas the music director is more like an artistic director that sets the parameters for the music that's going to be played. They choose the music. They choose the musicians. They have much more control over the whole thing. So there are some concerts where I have been the music director, but not the conductor. Not many, but occasionally it works that way. So I organize the season, but don't necessarily conduct all 4 concerts.
You mentioned a little while ago that this is going to be your 8th season,
yeah.
as the conductor. How have you seen the audience grow season to season?
Well, I have to admit that at my very first concert, I think it was 2011, I was kind of surprised that there was anybody in the audience besides the family of the musicians that were there. That's sort of what I imagined a community orchestra would draw, but not so. There were quite a few people there, obviously, that were not directly connected to the people in the orchestra, and since then, I think it's grown. I think the word has gotten out that it's an entertaining thing to do, and I think it may draw a bigger audience in a place like Auburn than it would in a big city, because there are fewer options to hear live orchestral music. One of the newer members just joined this fall, moved from Atlanta, and she played in a community orchestra in Atlanta, which of course has a very robust art scene and all sorts of different places you can hear orchestral music. She was able to come to our Pops concert last spring, and she was shocked at the number of people who were in the audience. And I think that says a lot about the orchestra, that it provides a good product, and it says something about the area that is interested in that.
So we talked about the first concert of the season, which is on the 26th of October at the Merry-Go-Round Playhouse. The second one is the holiday/Christmas concert, which will take place in the month of December, obviously. I wonder, how many different ways can you do a Christmas or holiday themed concert?
Well, the holiday concert is probably one that has the most repeated pieces, but I try not to do it too often. I think we're doing some things this year that I haven't done since 2011 or 2012. So we're hoping the people maybe have forgotten them a little bit, or don't recognize them as, oh yeah, we just heard that, because there is a limited number. But there are other things that will make it different. For this year, we have a very talented soprano singing with us. Laura Libby McCall is a soprano who sang with us when the orchestra accompanied Auburn players for HMS Pinafore, the Gilbert and Sullivan operetta, and she was one of the singers there, and I asked her after that if she would consider performing with the orchestra by herself. And so this Christmas she's going to be doing several pieces with us, which I think it sets it apart and gives me some other things to program that we haven't done before.
In the past, with the Christmas concert, we've worked with choirs, local choirs, to present a different type of concert. Is part of that trying to maybe put a new coat of paint on a pretty classic idea?
Well, it's there are many reasons for doing to inviting the chorus. Number one, it gets more people involved in the concert itself. With a slightly the side effect of having maybe a few more audience members than we really can handle in the space, but it's a great sound to have a chorus and an orchestra together, and I think it's although it's sometimes difficult for an orchestra to accompany, to not be the main thing. I think the combination is one of these that's bigger than the sum of the two parts, to have the chorus there as well. Having said that, it requires there's a lot of moving parts with those kind of concerts, so we're not going to do them every year.
The third concert of the season is early in 2019, late February, early March.
Yeah. And
that's the one where we kind of get to experiment every year and try to do something a little different.
Yeah, and that's it hasn't really found its identity, I guess, and maybe that's all right. We've done all sorts of different things with that. We've done Peter and the Wolf, and had artwork with that from area school students. We did HMS Pinafore was one of these. And last season we did a small ensemble, a string quartet, brass quintet, woodwind quintet, and the music was based around historical figures in Auburn. So we had Willard Case and Harriet Tubman and William Seward. So that was interesting too, and we had a very nice audience at the Carriage House Theater behind the museums. So this time out, we are going to have a family concert, something that is pieces that are designed to appeal to a broad range of ages. So generally shorter, sprightlier, and I'm very optimistic about the possibilities of us having part of this concert being what's called a side-by-side concert, which is often when a professional or community orchestra collaborates with a school group, or sometimes a youth orchestra, and they will combine and sit side by side for part of a concert. And so I have an arrangement of part of the last movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the Ode to Joy part of it. And it was written for a school district in Syracuse for 3 different levels of performance, a high school, middle school, and an elementary school, actually. And so we're going to use the top 2 of those, the high school and the middle school versions, and combine them, and maybe write some parts for the winds, so that members of the orchestra at Auburn Junior High will be performing with us, and they're just as string players, but they will be intermixed with our players as well. And I think that's a great way to expose more families, I think, to this concert. It lets these students know what's possible for them as they get older, and I think it's good for certainly younger kids in the concert to see, okay, there's some 7th or 8th graders up playing music with a real symphonic sound to it.
The 2018 to 2019 Auburn Chamber Orchestra concert season comes to an end in April of next year. Auburn Pops, the theme. What is Pops?
Well, actually, this started last year, and before that, we've had fairly distinct themes for this concert. And I found that just calling it Auburn Pops gave me a great deal of leeway to choose things that were very diverse. And so that made it fun for me to choose things, and I think it sold well with the audience. I think they liked the variety of music that was there. There were everything from old favorites to Frozen to everything in between. So it's and the idea of a Pops concert, it's like the Boston Pops would just do Boston Pops concerts without necessarily themes. And so that's what we're going to go with again this year. In the past, we've had things like movie music or Broadway music or TV music once, or what was it called? Music from the small screen.
Yes, and there was a video game.
Yeah, and actually the most interesting things were the transcriptions of video game music. Those were certainly the most fun to play and I think to listen to. But the Auburn Pops allows it to be sort of a wide open selection.
I've been lucky enough the last 5 April concerts to serve as the MC, and I wonder, what is it about that last concert of the season that kind of lends itself to needing a narrator?
Well, I think it has to do a lot with the variety of the pieces, and they are more contemporary. I think they are more modern for some older people than others. For some people, they're kind of ancient history. But I think it helps to have some explanation and put the pieces in context. If it was from a movie, what movie it was from. Give it a concept of where in history was it. Early 20th century or late 19th century. And I think it just helps to orient people. And the fact is that we don't have program notes for these programs, which is where this kind of information is often printed. But I like having it live. I think it helps people guide themselves through the concert.
I look forward to doing it again this coming April. I want to ask you, because you have many years of experience now as a conductor, and the orchestra has been around for at least one generation in Auburn, over 30 years.
Yeah.
Where do you see the orchestra going in the next few years?
I think what I would like to see is that we have a larger stable of adult string players. Our wind section is entirely adults, and those are the ones that have been there a very long time, and they're very loyal. And so there's very little movement in that. And the way the orchestra works is there is one person on a part with those. So there's only one second trombone player. And so unless that trombone player leaves, then there's no room for another trombone player to come in. We don't just keep adding. The strings is a little different, up to a certain limit. We would invite more and more string players. And for many years, we've been fairly highly dependent on talented high school students, which is great, and it's great to give them the opportunity to do that. But it's not exactly a consistent contribution to the orchestra. So if we had more, sort of stable adult string players, I think that would give it a stronger foundation year to year, and make it much easier to program for. Know more or less what we're going to have coming the next year. Other than that, I don't see a big change in the number of concerts, although we have talked often, and being in Seneca Falls here, we have occasionally thought of the idea of repeating a concert someplace else. I remember going to the college here and looking at their facility, which is really I think was very nice, and what it would take to do our concert on a Friday in Auburn and then do it on a Saturday night in the same weekend in Seneca Falls. Didn't happen that year. I'm not sure we gave it enough time to really get it organized, but I think that would be a way to maximize our rehearsal. So rather than getting it all done in one concert, we can do it twice and maybe reach a different audience that time. But I don't see any more than the normal 5 concerts outside of maybe a special event every once in a while.
How do you judge the success of a season? Or even the success of a show?
Of a concert? I think some of it has to do with audience and audience response. It's successful if it appeals to enough people that they want to come and listen to it. And feedback from the orchestra is another part of that. They say, "Yeah, I really liked playing these pieces. I appreciate the pieces you chose for that." And then I guess is how well I matched what we played to our abilities and to the audience.
And I know it's not exactly a unilateral decision. There's input from the orchestra. There's input from the board, which is never shy to share input. So it does become a team effort. And so when we start thinking about the next season, we all will exchange ideas and see what worked in the previous season and what didn't.
Yeah, I'm very happy to accept good ideas from anywhere. So if those come up, we'll try to see if they work.
Do you get ideas from the audience? You see a lot of the same people in the crowd with each concert. Do you accept their input or their suggestions?
And they don't really have, I think, a direct way to do that. We do have a survey at the end of the year. They get to talk about generically, what kind of music they would like to have, but not specific pieces. But that's that could be another theme for a show is orchestra personnel favorites, and we work from there.
The season begins at the Merry-Go-Round Playhouse on the 26th of October, 7:30 p.m., all about water.
All about water. And there are no tickets for this concert because we very happily accept a donation of $5 per person, but it is not mandatory. So
That's right.
Don't worry about selling out yet.
Information about the entire season and everything else at our website, auburnchamberorchestra.org. Steve Frackenpohl, conductor / music director / I don't know, expert. Can we give you that title as well?
Yeah. Depends on what we're talking about.
Steve, thanks a lot for your time.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to talk to you. It's nice to be in this studio. Thank you very much to Finger Lakes One.
Yeah, big difference from radio. For Steve Frackenpohl, for Zach Cornett, for Jim Sinacropi, and the entire team here, I'm Joe Salzone. Thanks for watching Around the Lakes on FingerLakes1.com.